At what point do you think a business owner should start mapping out their processes and recording what they're doing?
Like the first day.
We are back with another episode of the Cold Star Project. I am here with Celene Hoag of Anansi Content Solutions, and we're going to talk about how Celene scaled her own business. And there's a topic central to this that's near and dear to my heart, which is process engineering, which she knows all about and helps lots of clients with. And I think we could begin with that. Like, tell us a little bit about the business, Celene, and who you are and what you do.
Cool. So first of all, it's actually not my business. The owner is Say, but I've worked with her basically since the beginning. We started as a team of 2 and a part-time VA, and now we're a team of 5 and probably growing to 6 pretty soon. We do white label content for digital agencies. So as I'm sure you know, working with a lot of digital agencies, owners are run off their feet. They're wearing a million hats, and content is miserable for most of them because either they're writing it and they don't have time to do it, or their clients are writing it and it's awful and it takes forever and clients never get back to them. So basically, through the magic power of processes, we've refined ours so that we can basically bang through content start to finish without any hiccups or delays from the client in most cases.
Nice. And is this a premium service or something that's more on the affordable scale of things? How does that work out?
I would say it's fairly premium because one part of what we do is we do a strategy before we dive into any copywriting. So we sit down with clients, we interview them, learn about their businesses. Then we have basically a live feedback session where we present a content strategy brief that talks about like their key messaging, what makes them unique, their voice, their brand, their audience, how to engage with their audience, what type of language their audience uses. And then we go ahead and we write drafts, and then we send it to the client so they have a chance to look over it beforehand. And we do another live feedback session where we kind of basically go through the drafts on the spot. And I would say about 80 to 90% of the time it's approved on the spot, sometimes a couple of tweaks afterward. But I think in that case, like having the live sessions is what really keeps projects on track, because then the clients aren't like, you're not waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for them to finally look at the drafts. There's the meeting book. They have to look at it. There's a deadline.
Right. Yeah, I've talked about what I call the project start gap a lot, where somebody pays you money and then you're waiting around for critical information from them so that you can get started. And if you've got people kind of on the clock waiting around and they're getting paid, so money is bleeding out of the project and yet you're not able to move forward. And so you've gotten around that by having this kickoff meeting then, right?
Yeah, and there's so many costs involved when things delay. Early on, before we discovered or refined our process to this point, we had that problem. And there's, by the time that you've actually done the project, the money's already spent on like employees or other costs. And then you're also spending way more time on projects because you're constantly following up, chasing them and down. So yeah, there's, money bleeds in a few different directions, definitely.
Right. So tell us about some of the problems that you started running into as you began getting clients and having to do fulfillment. And obviously the first one was this start gap, like, hey, they're not responding. I got to grab them by the ear and get the information out of them. And then what happened?
Yeah. And especially because, of course, they'd all suddenly come back to us at once and want to start at once. And Say and I are busy trying to grow the business and work on the business rather than in the business. But at this point, it was still just us and a VA. So we're trying to do the projects and we're trying to, also grow the business, and we're, going crazy, but we weren't really sure how to hire or where to hire. Like what position do we hire? Do we just hire a writer? Do we hire a project manager? But actually what really, really was kind of the magic key turning point was we implemented what we call the single scalable seat.
Okay.
So basically, we have strategists now that handle a project start to finish. Say and I work on the business itself. We do the sales, we do the account management, marketing, accounting, all those kind of back end stuff. And so now, if say we're pretty slow, we have 2 strategists. They take on as much work as we give them until they're full capacity. Then, like for example, right now we're run off our feet with business, so we're hiring a new strategist. So it's really easy when more business comes in to hire a strategist. We have all the processes in place down to like the very last detail of how to email partners, like message templates and everything. So then they can quickly kind of come in and start taking on projects. And every time we grow again, it's super easy to just add a new strategist. And we've kind of realized, like one strategist can generate or can handle this much worth of projects, generates that much revenue. They're actually paid on a percentage of a project basis. So we already know our cost of goods sold. So it's really been super helpful for scaling the business to have that kind of system in place rather than always trying to figure out who to hire. We just have the one seat we just add more of as we grow.
Right. Now, who manages the managers? Is that your role?
Yeah, so I'm the integrator, and basically what that means is I kind of act as the liaison between Say, who does all the like very, very high level planning, and she does the sales and stuff, and the rest of the team. So I make sure everything's on track. I kind of schedule in when projects start, check in with the strategists regarding their capacity and availability. I'm basically the go-between for all that.
Okay. Why do you think it is that people who start a business, especially a service business like this, completely avoid processes and don't want to talk about numbers? I see this a lot, right? They want to hide away from the math, and therefore they do not understand whether they're profitable or not. They're just kind of limping along from thing to thing.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
My background, actually, before I started doing this, when I went to university, I was a stats and econ major. So I love numbers. But I know for a lot of people, I know like we work with digital agency owners, they're creative, they're designers, they start their business because they want to do this. They love what they do, and that's what they want to do. Their background isn't really in the numbers and the data, and especially smaller agencies, they're so busy doing the project work, they don't have time to sit back and analyze numbers and write out processes. Processes take time. Because, you could spend 5 minutes doing something, or you could spend 20 minutes like doing it, writing out all the steps, recording the video, going back and making sure everything's in place, finding somewhere to store it, making sure everyone else can access it. And if you do that for every little piece of your business, it takes time. And we kind of set aside that time. We know that when you create a process, it's going to take longer up front, but in the end, it saves a ton of time.
Right. Now, you mentioned this phrase, single scalable seat. Let's dig in a little bit more to that. Where'd that come from, and how do you know? How do you know when you've built a thing that is the right, I guess, model?
Yeah. Well, actually, this idea came to us from Brent Weaver, who is the head of YouGurus. Okay. And we had this same issue with capacity and trying to figure out what we were going to do, because we were like, we have more work than we can do, and we're still kind of spinning our wheels in the mud and not getting anywhere and super busy, even though all these people want to pay us. And he kind of shared a bit about how his, because it's, I guess, a mentoring agency, how they work. They have mentors that mentor digital agencies, and that's what they do. When they have a whole bunch of people who enroll for their boot camp or any of their programs, they add more mentors. So we essentially stole it from him, tweaked it for our business. But it's worked out really, really well for us.
And so the concept is there's like a beginning, a middle, and an end to this, or is it meant to be an ongoing thing, or what?
It's mostly ongoing. Our goal isn't to be like this giant corporation of 80 people. So I guess whenever we get to a comfortable place, that's when we would stop. I think our 10-year plan probably has maybe 4 strategists in it, 4 or 5. But in theory, you could do it forever, but then you'd have to hire more project managers, more you would have to start hiring other roles at that point to manage, the like way larger influx of people. You'd have to hire salespeople to fill the pipelines of that many people. So in a larger model, you have to start adding other seats, but for our agency size right now, it works really well.
Okay. How do you find out what the capacity of one of your strategists is that you're bringing on? So you've got this single scalable seat, you've got processes, you think you understand, at least the first time you're running it, right? What they should be able to handle. How do you estimate that, and then what do you do to adjust?
Well, it's so funny. We're actually in the middle of that right now, where we just had a really comfortable flow of work. And so I kind of got a little bit lax about capacity and stuff, and we knew roughly they can handle about one kickoff a week per project, sometimes two if they're smaller projects. And then all of a sudden, in about the last week and a half, we had the single biggest week in our entire company. And we have a lineup of people who are like, we want our content, we want it now. And suddenly we're like, oh, can we take this all on? So we're actually building that. We have in Sheets, we've already built a capacity calendar that kind of shows monthly how many hours are available by each strategist, how many hours a project takes. We have 3 levels of projects. Our standard packages are starter, influencer, and thought leader. So we know that maybe a starter project takes 15 hours total start to finish. An influencer might take 25, and a thought leader might take, I don't even know, 40 or 50. I have the number somewhere. But we can basically kind of play around and model, hey, if we start one project in this week, and of course, projects, the hours they take, for example, a thought leader might take 6 weeks versus a starter might take 3 weeks. So we know it's, say, 10 hours in the first week, 5 hours in the second week, 5 hours in the third week. And so I have this very in-depth spreadsheet that I can kind of model that and know when they can take on more projects and when they can't. I would be more than happy to share that with you because it's pretty cool, actually.
How necessary do you think that capacity planning is? Do you run into a lot of people who, like you asked the question, can we even take this on, this work, right? Do you think people avoid that kind of question and just kind of take everything that's thrown their way, or do they actually think it through?
I think most people take everything that's thrown their way and then try and figure out a way to make it work afterward, because nobody likes turning down money. Someone comes to us and be like, hey, we want you to do this. We have $5,000 for you. Like, what are you going to say? Sorry, I don't want it. Sometimes we'll have to say, hey, we're now fully booked for December and up to the middle of January. So we'd love to work with you, but our next kickoff is, say, January 17th or something. But I would say most people probably, I guess it depends on where they are in their business. Most people are still at the place where they add more people, they have more capacity, they want more business, or maybe they're at capacity and then they just start working 80-hour work weeks.
Right, which is not good, because then your quality,
you reach burnout,
decisions drops, and and whatnot.
But people still do it anyway.
So do you hire VAs, or are they like formal employees, or what? How is that organized?
Well, right now we have one VA. I think I mentioned to you earlier, we went through just a string of unfortunate incidences where we hired a VA and then she had a family emergency, and then we hired another VA. And by the end of the second week, we realized that she totally misrepresented her qualifications. But actually, we hire VAs from the Philippines. We find that it works really, really well for us because, obviously, per hour, their hourly wage is lower, but even so, we can afford to pay them, 5-10 times the minimum wage, or something, like a really, really, really good wage for them. And so we can get the very, very best talent of people who are super skilled at still, what would be like an entry-level wage for the United States. So our VA, she works 40 hours a week. She works exclusively for us. And we hired her through, we put on job boards, and there's a app or a subscription service called Vervo. And it's like a really in-depth hiring platform where you can set multiple online interviews where they do test questions, they do video answers and stuff. And of course, we have the huge process, the hiring process that has every step. And then we do, we have 2 rounds of the online interviews. We do the live in-person interview, then we do a test project. So by the time we hire them, we're usually pretty confident that they have not only the skills, but the right mindset and culture to fit with our team.
And so you've gone through that learning process of how to filter for good VAs and find the right tools as well to help you do that. What would you say to a more new or scrambly kind of business owner who is looking at that and going, well, that sounds great, but I don't have time to do that?
You don't have time not to do it, because if you're scrambling around, chances are you have a lot of work that isn't high value work. It's not what's making you the money. It's not the best use of your time. It's basic small administrative work that somebody else can do. And then you can use that time to do more sales, to fulfill more jobs, to build your business. You can do that kind of high level work that is most meaningful to your company because you have somebody else hiring or billing all like the smaller things and managing your projects and stuff.
Okay. At what point do you think a business owner should start mapping out their processes and recording what they're doing?
Like the first day.
Okay.
I would say maybe not the first day, but once they've done a couple projects and they have that general process, that's a good time to start recording. For example, we just introduced a new service where we do basically layouts for the content we write. So we not only do we do the content, but we actually do like the layouts. We have whatever design templates the designers use. We choose those. We say, hey, this is the text that's going to go in this spot. This is the button text, the link, like kind of all the bells and whistles. And I've written up more of the bare bones of the process for that, but we haven't filled in the details yet because it's going to take us doing it a couple times to really understand what the most efficient way to do it is. And then once we're comfortable with how we do it, then we're going to start filling in all like the really minutia of each individual step. Because otherwise, I mean, I could write it now and it would be completely wrong or changed because we haven't really gotten our groove with it yet.
Okay. So get a little bit of experience with it, and that should teach you what the boundaries are, and then you can fill in the blanks as you go.
But don't leave it too long or it's going to be overwhelming.
Right. How long should go by before somebody reviews their process and checks, are we still doing it this way? Is this the best way to be doing it? Should we be doing this at all anymore?
I would say probably realistically, I mean, every couple months is probably ideal. Usually we do it every time we hire and a new person is following those processes. We look through and we're like, oh, this is super out of date, or, oh, this references this thing we don't do anymore. And then we have to go through, and probably with every hire, I spend at least a few days going through all the processes and updating them for what we currently do, and checking with the people who do them and say, hey, is this still how you do it? Have you found a better, more efficient way? But I mean, usually we'll update as we go too, but we always do like a big batch of huge process revisions.
Okay. So yeah, at the very most every quarter, I would imagine looking at this thing again. When you bring on a new hire, so are you doing the training and taking them by the hand through the processes, or is that your strategist's job and you're kind of filling in the gaps?
It really depends on the position. For the strategist, it's usually Say handling it because she has a lot more of the background and the content and the strategy. And we do a lot. We used to do like a lot of intensive training, and now we let strategists rely primarily on the processes and videos we've made. And we found that they learn a lot better that way. And then our training sessions are more of Q&A sessions. So we'll say, hey, watch this video, read through this process. Or the set of processes, then here we have our like 3 or 4 meetings a week or whatever it is. Ask me all the questions you have about this. What doesn't make sense? What do you want to learn more about? And that way they're learning not the basics of how to do things, but how to do things really well. And then we'll usually sit through them with the first couple meetings or watch the recordings of their meetings later and give them feedback or on their deliverables. Okay.
So it really gives you a lot of consistency in your training. Everybody sees the same thing, and then they can stick up their hands, and if a bunch of people ask the same question or 2 in a row, I would imagine then there's a gap to be filled there. How much involvement are you having in managing the numbers of the business, the cash flow, the accounting, making sure was this project profitable?
That's basically entirely my responsibility. So we actually we use Teamwork as our project management system, and we track our time in there. So we have a sheet that has all of our projects, how many weeks it's gone on for, what the fee is, what the cost of goods sold for the strategist is, and also what their current hours are at. And we have a target hour. So for example, I mentioned our starter might take 15 hours. If that's our target, we can say, hey, we're 2/3 of through the project, and we're already over our hours on that project. So maybe try and wrap this up or think of ways that this can be more efficient in the future. I mean, I know all projects are different. Some clients, they're just super easy and you bang through it. Sometimes they're like really high needs, or they have changes halfway through, or they're, always wanting to hop on more calls and stuff. So our strategists, because we pay them a fixed price per project, they kind of manage their own time, but we want to make sure that they're being efficient with their time too.
What do you do in that situation where the client is not going berserk and it's not maybe a negative experience, but they're not being easy, right? They're not flowing through. Is that like a expectations not set well up front thing, or is that a, hey, this person's like the wild horse that we can't tame, and we just got to do something about it?
Well, I would say most of our clients with this process go through it really, really well. There are two types of people who end up that are higher needs. They're not like necessarily bad clients. The first are people who are really, really detail oriented and want to be very, very, very involved. And again, that's not a bad thing because they care about the process. But a lot of times, if they're control freaks or they're really, they just want to be really involved, and it takes a bit more time. But it's usually okay because the end result is worth it. The other type of client that takes an extra amount of time are people who change their minds halfway through. Where, we've had this where we're presenting the drafts, we're doing the live feedback session for the draft, and they're like, oh, we're actually totally changing our business, or we've added this section to our business. Can you just like write another 5 pages or something for it? And at that point we say, hey, this is out of scope. We've already confirmed, because we confirm everything at every stage. We have the deep dive interview. Or multiple interviews. We have the content strategy brief where we confirm all their messaging. We confirm the sitemap. We confirm everything. So at that point, we'll say, we can potentially do this, but we'll have to bill extra for it because it's not within the original scope of the project.
Okay. So super clear expectations on project scope, which, as we know, is something that for many consultants and agencies can gallop away.
We don't do scope creep.
Right. Have you ever had a bad experience where you stood on that scope and said, this is what we agreed on and you agreed to it, and they're just over there chirping away that, hey, I want it changed?
You know what? We actually haven't. Sometimes they're like, a lot of times they'll always be like, oh, can you just squeeze this in or squeeze that in? And if we're already under time on the project or we have more leeway, sometimes we will do a small change here or there. And it depends as well on the partner, because we have recurring relationships with the digital agencies we work with. So we want to make sure that their relationship with the client is solid. But most of the time, I would say they're pretty understanding. It's usually when things get off the track and everyone has a negative experience is when we don't stand our ground. And then we do this and do that, or they change their mind. That's usually when at the end, nobody feels like anything was really accomplished and nobody feels super satisfied. But that maybe it's just because we have all these processes in place and we have very clear expectations that it actually doesn't happen very often.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear. And that is a protective power of processes, to get my alliteration on. One of the things, I want to dig into this and then we'll wrap up.
For sure.
When I first noticed you were commenting on a thread in a group about using apps like Teamwork, and you had a huge piece of content there about, and I was like, wow, and I pointed it out to my past co-founder, because what we found like 6 months into using Asana was that we didn't like our own process flow for it, and we threw everything out and we redesigned it, and we discovered that the thing Asana was the same. It wasn't like Asana suddenly turned blue or something, right? Or had its own interface completely changed. We changed, and so we learned that you can have a tool, but you need to learn how to use it for yourself. It could be completely different in the process that you run on top of the thing, but underneath it, it's still the same. So just getting a project management tool is not enough. That was a big takeaway that we had. What other things have you seen, couple tidbits that you could give to people who are considering using or who maybe have struggled with using a project management tool like Teamwork? And we moved to Teamwork actually after Asana. That would help them kind of get their heads around it and using it effectively.
I would say start with all the bells and whistles turned off and then slowly explore them, because teamwork can be so overwhelming. There's billing, there's milestones, there's Gantt charts. Teamwork, actually, we just got the first message this morning. They're having their 12 days of Christmas where they're introducing a new feature every single day. I think today was the schedule planner for your team or something. And there are so many things. So, start with the basics, master those, and then move on. Or better yet, assign your VA to master those. Teamwork has the Teamwork Academy or whatever they call it. Get someone else to master teamwork for you. And then, start with a couple features and then play around. Because some are useful, some aren't. Billing, for example, for us in teamwork is not useful at all. So we just turn it off. But yeah, because otherwise you're just going to get swamped. You're going to get lost, and it's going to end up, instead of making your workflow easier, it's just going to overwhelm you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we struggle with user adoption. We struggle with getting our people to use it instead of Asana or Google Docs or Google Sheets, right? Google Team Drives, where everything was kind of tucked away in there. Our hope was that searching for things would become easier, and it just didn't, right?
Yeah.
So you do have to learn this thing on your own, or get a VA to do it. And I like your idea of turning off all the advanced settings and just learning how to use the core of the thing.
And processes.
Yes.
Because we have, even when we set up a new project in teamwork, we have the processes. We have obviously we have, I'm a process nerd, you're a process nerd. We have processes for everything. But we have the process for, creating a new project. We have a Zap that creates a Google Drive folder for the project when a new teamwork project is created. We have the process for turning on Google Drive integration, adding partners. If you have a process for everything, then you don't need to remember how to do it each time, because you just follow your own instructions.
Right. Very handy. Tell us, I guess, to wrap up, what kind of a situation would potential clients be in to use Anansi Content Solutions? Where would people be at where they're like, okay, now I need this?
Well, first of all, digital agency owners, we're white label. We don't work directly with clients except for in a couple of very, very rare situations. But basically, anyone who's designing websites or sending marketing campaigns, anything like that where you need content. I would say selling at least $10,000 to $15,000 projects, because if you're only charging $2,000 for a website, you can't afford content. But basically, I would say, once you're starting to grow and you're finding yourself overwhelmed or you just don't want to deal with it, that's probably when you need a content team. And it's, a lot of agencies, they think, oh, I can't afford content on my projects. It's going to take away from my margins. But we actually recommend that our partners mark up our services 1.5 to 2 times. So really, they're not even touching content. They're not worrying about it, and they're still making profit on it. So people like working with us.
Yeah, it sounds like a great deal.
Yeah.
Awesome. And where can people go online to get a hold of you?
www.anansicontent.com. I'm sure you can just
let's spell that out, because there will be an audio only version of this.
ANANSICONTENT.com. I hope I spelled that right. I don't have it.
It looks like it from my notes here. All right. My guest today has been Celene Hoag. Thanks for being here. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I did too. Have a great day, Jason.